Hello, welcome to all of you to this session on ancient art. Here we will first deal with Paleolithic art. Mirror plays no important role in man's existence. Still we find everyone almost every day uses mirror all over the world. It shows man's universal urge to look at himself. Art, to some extent, seems to share the same interest. While one reads a novel, watches a movie, looks at a painting or sculpture, he is carried away by his unconscious drive to see his own image as reflected by the author or artist. Man thus becomes the central subject in his art of any kind. However, in the first instance, it seems hardly true in the case of prehistoric cave paintings, in which it is not man but animal that predominates the imagery. Animals of various kinds in various forms and sizes. Does it mean that the prehistoric man more liked to look at the animals than to look at himself? Could the prehistoric artist find beauty only in the animal figures? What was the prehistoric idea about art? Does it have anything to do with our concept of art? These are some interesting queries that one tends to bear in mind in the beginning. To seek convincing explanation to them, we have to analyze briefly some important features pertaining to prehistoric art and culture. Man makes his first artistic appearance around 40,000 years ago. Numerous decorative meanders on clay in many caves in Europe bear clear testimony to it. Figures smeared with ochre or clay leave 4 parallel lines when they are trailed across a blank rock surface. One of the best examples of them hails from the cave wall of Altamira in Spain. It seems quite meaningless and casual, as the meanders have no definite shape, but the urge behind them has to be viewed as an important step towards artistic expression. The meanderings were formed in imitation of the traces on the opposite wall left by bear while sharpening its claws. Man's universal instinct for imitation, which constitutes an important element in the later expression of art, can be seen vividly reflected on meanders. Moreover, in the Altamira meanders, there is an easily identifiable image of a bull's head with a lifelikeness, which comes to provide the earliest available evidence of man's move towards anything artistic. Resemblance stems out of imitation in the meanders was a result of those who interpreted their marks on the spot and subsequently completed them to increase the likeness they had observed. Then they were able to reproduce the outline intentionally and line drawing proper began. However, we do not have sufficient evidence to trace continuous evolution of prehistoric art from its infant stage of meanders to its fully developed representational skill, which portrays animals in convincing realism. The apogee of Paleolithic art appears in the caves of Altamira in northern Spain and Lascaux in the Dordogne region of France. Images of animals of bison, horses, deer, etc. appear in great profusion in painted, incised and sculpted forms on the surfaces of rocks in both sides. They hail from a period between 15,000 and 10,000 BC. Considering their hoary past, their realism comes to strike us most. The painted image of a wounded bison deserves a special mention in this regard. The dying animal has collapsed on the ground. Its legs are no longer able to carry the weight of the body, its head lowered in defense. Looking at each part of its body, we will be amazed to see the keen observation of the prehistoric artist and his sure hand, bold outline and the subtle tonal gradation that allows him to bring home the senses of bulk and roundness of the beast and its defeated brutality. The excruciating pain that the animal is experiencing is also tellingly expressed. Animal representations in black outline and sometimes filled in with bright earth colors, mostly in red ochre, in the cave at Lascaux also speaks of surprising skill and observation of the Paleolithic artist. Looking at these instances, we can learn that irrespective of the site and imagery, the Paleolithic artist seems to have been obsessed with the realism in representation. Analyzing it from a close quarter would reveal that there is something peculiar about the Paleolithic realism other than what we may tend to look at it. With a ceiling of 59 feet long, 26 to 30 feet wide and 4 to 6 feet height, the Altamira cave in Spain, which is considered to be the swan song of prehistoric art, has numerous representations of animals like horse, deer, bison, etc. The cave at Lascaux in France is mostly painted with bison. An average length of bison is 8 feet, in some cases they are 12 feet long. They are predominantly painted in red ochre with a little use of yellow, green and black. Contour is emphasized with a black line. In every instance, the animal is shown in profile view, but the horn always in the frontal. In a much more conspicuous manner, these multiple viewpoints in a single form appears invariably in the Mesolithic rock paintings of India. It shows that image with multiple views had basically characterized the prehistoric art everywhere. This is because the prehistoric painter constructed an image of his idea about the animal and not what exactly an animal looked like in chance angles. Imageries in the Altamira and Lascaux caves are not copies of the real animal. They are in fact copies of the primitive hunter artist's mental picture of the animal. Through his familiarity with the animal, he conceives of each form in a particular angle in which it can be visually explained the best way. It further shows that the Paleolithic artist knows nothing about the optical coherence of various pictorial elements and the rationalistic methods of composition. Moreover, he never felt the need for making an image of animal looked exactly like the one in reality. His basic idea was to construct an image which is capable of evoking the illusion of the real. It is only to that extent that the prehistoric animal representations come to live up. Apart from that, we can again find that the Paleolithic realism within itself keeps a strong drive towards abstraction, because for him it was not just a question of recording an object in visual terms. He was in fact translating his sensorial experience into the visuals. As René Hugh says, to see an animal is to be assailed by an endless multiplicity of visual sensations. In order to draw it, it is necessary to reduce these sensations to a shape which both embraces and signifies all of them. It is within this intricate process of transforming an object into an image, an experience into the visual, that an artist generally allows him to resort certain amount of abstraction, so that his image becomes something representing the reality, at the same time getting away from it as well. This aspect, which plays a significant role in the later art, had its origin in the Paleolithic. René Hugh further explains that when the Lascaux or Altamira painter captured the likeness of his model, he never represented a particular animal. He never produced a particular bison, horses or reindeer, but the one representing the whole species. It leads to generalization and simplifications to its maximum, but only by ensuring the likeness of the model. The model may be either a real animal in nature or drawings done on pebbles. René Hugh observes that The prehistoric artist copied an established model far more often than they observed directly from nature. Drawings carried on pebbles discovered on large scale refer to the fact that his prehistoric art had its great masters whose successful works were preserved and imitated. Now, we have to shift our focus to a different aspect of the cave paintings. The animal representation first of all raises a question as to what idea and purpose had shaped such paintings. Was it a pastime activity? Was it a result of an urge to decorate a blank space of the cave wall? Or was it an artistic expression meant to have delight over the chemistry of lines and colors, forms and patterns? What was the function it probably served to the unorganized primitive life of old Stone Age? We know that life in the Paleolithic age was lived around hunting and food gathering. Paleolithic culture did not produce but depended entirely on natural resources of food. It believed in no gods, in no life beyond death. In its purely practical life, everything obviously still turned around the bare earning of a livelihood. In such a culture, art was obviously a means for procuring food. There is no evidence to believe otherwise. In many instances, cave paintings showing animals pierced with arrows, some others with handprints. In some sculptural representations, the body of the animal is shown with holes as marks of having it wounded by spears or arrows. These examples offer us convincing interpretation that the cave paintings were done as part of magic rituals. The prehistoric artist and hunter did not differentiate the painted animal from the real one. Rather, the picture was the continuation of the reality. An example cited by Arnold Hauser helps a great deal to understand this phenomenon. A Red Indian who saw a researcher preparing sketches said, "I know that this man has put many of our bisons into his book. I was there when he did it, and since then he had no bisons." The primitive attitude was revealed in this was at work behind the cave paintings. Image as different and separate from reality had no meaning in the Paleolithic culture. What was painted was taken for the real, as if the icon in the temple is taken for the real god. Before going out hunting, the game was killed in advance in the magic ritual. Making a picture of an animal, they meant to bring the animal itself within their grasp, and in killing the image they thought they had killed the animal's vital spirit. Once this picture killing was done, it was believed that the hunter's courage was debilized because the real animal was already half killed. Thus, as Arnold Hauser says, the picture was both representation and the things represented, both wish and wish fulfillment at one and the same time. The pictorial representation was, to the prehistoric man, nothing but the anticipation of the desired effect. The real event had inevitably to follow the magical sample action. It was, therefore, by no means a question of symbolical surrogatory functions, but of really purposive action. In a different manner, this attitude still retains its presence even today, though in a latent form. We carry photographs of our beloveds because it gives us pleasure of having their presence, but we tear up or distort the photographs of those who turn to be our bitter enemy. Animals represented as wounded or pierced with arrows, darts or spears bear traces of this magical ritual. The handprints over the painted animals explain their belief that they acquired power over the animals through the ritual killing. There are some more points come to support this argument. Plethora of animal paintings huddles in the inaccessible dark area of the caves. They hardly appear at the mouth of the caves where they can be seen in the daylight. Moreover, the picture gallery of Altamira and Lascaux are situated in the darkest and dead end of the cave, and it is only by crawling that one can reach there. These specificities of the location of representations also make us presume that the cave paintings did not serve any aesthetic enjoyment. Further, the discovery of some vestiges of a ritual dance from the same sites where animals were painted reiterates the painting's association with magic rituals. In this context, we should also note the peculiar compositions of the paintings. Each portrayal is not well arranged or framed by leaving sufficient blank space around it. Images appear disorderly, huggy-puggy, and often they are superimposed one another. This fact also argues against the idea that the paintings probably are meant to cater to aesthetic delight. Rather, it shows that the picture killing associated with the magical ritual was repeated over and again at the same site where the prehistoric man, however, found it the most suitable place. These aspects pertaining to the prehistoric painting and culture would explain the logic of realism in their representation. A realistic image has immeasurable power to make the spectator believe what he sees is no longer an image but the real. Like an impersonator who wears a mask on his face in a ritual dance no longer represents the god but he is the god. This magical religious motivation has a decisive role in shaping the mimetic pictorial device called realism of the Paleolithic paintings. That's why realism comes to dominate the Paleolithic world and thought. This fact is a proof that art in the beginning was entirely in the service of life. We can locate within this context of form and function relationship the apparent absence of human figures in the prehistoric imagery. In a very few exceptions wherein the human figures appear in rock engravings, their realism is not as much pronounced as in the animal paintings. Their size, unlike that of the animals in the cave, is considerably small. It implies that the prehistoric artist was not at all concerned with the image of man, but he was obsessed with the image of animal which sustained his life. Sculpture. Sculptural stream of Paleolithic art has a different story to tell. Very distinct from the large-scale animal representations, the Upper Paleolithic period had produced small and hand-sized carvings and engravings in bone, horn, or in stone. The earliest of such small-scale enterprise found so far are small figures skillfully carved on mammoth tusk from a cave in Germany made 30,000 years ago. A prehistoric engraving on a mammoth's tusk discovered at Pridmost in Moravia, Czechoslovakia is particularly interesting. It does not represent any animal or a human being. Rather, it tries to portray an imaginary being or monster expressed through the enlarged eyes, mouths, and decorative patterns on the forehead. It implies the fact that Paleolithic man had an urge to become transformed into other being. Many examples in which prehistoric rock engravings of man appearing as disguised animal or other being come to validate this presumption. The rock engravings of La Troy Freres perceptibly show man's urge to become metamorphosed as sorcerer by concealing his real body beneath animal skin. Female figures produced in sculptural forms are of great importance, though their numbers are not as many as the animals or even human figures. They are significant by their stylistic features. They are carved either in round or in bas relief. They generally hail from a period between 25,000 to 20,000 years ago. The sculptural females of the Upper Paleolithic are called Venuses. The Venus of Willendorf, found near Danube in Austria, is a round statue carved in limestone with a height of 11 cm. The Venus of Lausel, Dordogne, another important female figure, is a bas-relief carved on a fragment of a rock face. Its height is 43 cm. As superbly manifested in the Venus of Willendorf, the female statues have the sexual regions, breast, buttocks and stomachs exaggerated. At the same time, other part of the body is either not given importance or completely omitted. It shows that the important elements of the female anatomy, which differentiates themselves from the male body, are emphasized in the Venuses. The faceless and feetless body of the Venus stands for the female aspect to be stressed. It is obvious by these former features that the Venuses are not just representations of a neutral body, but of a particular body whose significance was recognized by the prehistoric mind, either in relation to fecundity or sexuality. Though the Venuses by these features are generally considered to be the cult object of fertility, that it was worshipped as a mother goddess for the increase of progeny, it hardly seems to be tenable due to many facts. First of all, the question of the fertility cult or mother goddess worship arises only in relation to agriculture, which man began in the Neolithic period by 8000 BC. The Paleolithic Venuses hail from a period between 25,000 and 20,000 BC. In addition to that, unlike the life-size representations of animals painted for the magic rituals, the size of the Venus is astonishingly small. The Venus of Willendorf, for instance, is only 4 inches high. It suggests that the size of the Venuses does not imply a ritual performance in which the Venus mother goddess can be viewed from a distance to propitiate. Here are some questions that you can attend. What are the stylistic features of the Paleolithic art? What is the significance of realism in the representations of animals in Paleolithic art? Animal representations cannot be looked at as works of art because they are closely related to the Paleolithic life. Explain. Explain the stylistic features and the meanings of the Venuses of Paleolithic art. For further reference, you can refer to these books. Hope you have enjoyed this session. We will meet again in the next session on the Neolithic art. Until then, goodbye.